Donald Trump brought the issue of reclassification of cannabis up at a press conference, and I thought I'd be time to get Kevin's point of view on all that. Kevin, welcome as always. First of all, tell people about smart approaches to cannabis.
Yeah, so we started SAM. I've served in 3 different White House administrations, and so Patrick Kennedy, David Frum, and others, along with a scientific group of about 15 researchers from around the country, started SAM to raise awareness about America's most misunderstood drug. People don't get that it's so much stronger than it used to be. It's not Woodstock weed. It's really turned into Wall Street weed with a small number of people wanting to make a lot of money off of heavy use. So we're trying to raise awareness about that.
Yeah, there's no longer... I had seen addiction to cannabis over the years, but the high concentrations is making that even more common. It's interesting. People are more likely to get addicted and move on to another drug. Back in the day, they used to kind of move on to something else. Now they just stay with the weed. The other thing is something I doubted for years, which is now is not at all controversial. It's absolutely axiomatic, which is that cannabis is causing particularly manic psychotic episodes, if not schizophreniform episodes. It's common now, and it's very concerning.
It's very common. It's the number one drug, more than methamphetamine, tied to psychosis, schizophrenia now. When you look at the literature, there was just a big paper, Canadian researchers, something like a 241-fold increase in your likelihood of schizophrenia. I mean, we've never seen these before with any other drug, and so
I know
there's just so much misconception. Yeah.
Then the other thing I'm seeing is over the age of 65, people are developing these, what they're calling overdoses, but they're actually anticholinergic deliriums. For why that's happening, I have no idea. But again, it's that they must be spilling over in some way in the older brain because they're, again, so powerful. But be that as it may, it does have some medical applications, as there are people that are benefited from it. You know how I've always felt, Kevin, there's no such thing as a good drug and a bad drug. There's just how people relate to them and, you know, how people get in trouble or how people get therapeutic response. So what do you do with the reclassification conversation?
Well, look, of course, there's our medicinal components of marijuana, just like there are other plants, and other opium, coca, and we have FDA approved drugs based on marijuana. Nobody has a problem with that. The issue with the reclassification is it's actually very little to do with medicine, very little to do with research, but a lot to do with money. It would allow a huge tax break for the marijuana industry because they could do what they call the 280E repeal, which would allow them to deduct business expenses. So if they're dealing with marijuana in these states, they can start advertising the heck out of it as if it needs more advertising, and make a lot more money. So that's why this sort of small wing in the Republican Party has become very vocal. The sort of interests that they're all tied to marijuana. I mean, Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, has a son-in-law in the marijuana industry. One of her best clients is the biggest medical marijuana owner in the east of the Mississippi. There are big moneyed interests that are urging President Trump. I think, thankfully, most of the White House officials that are looking at this don't want him to do it. We'll obviously see what happens. And this is put in his lap by former President Biden, who saw rescheduling as a compromise. He didn't want to legalize it, but his people said, listen, if you want to get reelected, you better do something on this. This is popular among young people. So they thought rescheduling would be a compromise. Obviously, events have changed over the last 2 years since that happened, and now it's in President Trump's lap.
What do you think he's going to do?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, I think that's $1 million question, but, at the end of the day, what it would do would not make our country safer. Certainly wouldn't make our country healthier, not because it would be legalized, because it actually wouldn't be legalized if you reschedule, but because it would do the two things. One is the tax break, so it supercharge the PR. But the other thing is, you can just imagine the headlines now, Drew, marijuana downgraded. I mean, the average person doesn't know what that means. It doesn't mean it's some sort of technical reclassification, which is really what it is. The average person would think, the government thinks marijuana is less harmful than it ever was, even though it's more harmful than it ever was. So who knows? There are, again, very powerful interests urging him to do this. I hope he doesn't do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always thought naively, I guess, that if we just, did whatever we're going to do with cannabis, legalize it or decriminalize it, whatever we're going to do, then we could start to have rational conversations about it, because all the irrational energy was around the legal situation. And I've been proven to be wrong, particularly in the state of California, where, you have to ask, who are you going to believe, the cannabis lobby or your lying eyes? And the cannabis lobby are the ones that get the attention. They've got the cultural sort of zeitgeist, and we in medicine are seeing all these terrible things. You know, the one thing, the other bad reaction that is so common, and it drives me crazy when I see these headlines that go, rare cannabis side effect on the rise, which is the hyperemesis. Hyperemesis is, if you're doing dabs, you're having hyperemesis. It's just that, almost that simple. At least heartburn. And it's
uncontrollable vomiting.
It's so common. And it's not even, you know, it's not even uncontrollable. It's just, it's vomiting, sort of spontaneous, repeated vomiting. And I see these people all the time getting multi-million-dollar workups and actually getting surgeries, getting their gallbladders out, getting, you know, hiatal hernias treated aggressively. And it's all cannabis. And they never tell their doctor, or the doctor isn't aware what the cannabis is doing.
Yeah, no, it's because the legalization actually ushered in this completely new level of drug that we never had before. Not that what we had before was good, but we never had 99% THC dabs. We never had the waxes. We never had the gummies, the edibles, the tonics, the elixirs, the suppositories. I mean, this was not part, but when we legitimized it, normalized it, and now you have people like Mike Tyson, who are trying to, you know, get in the president's ear. But of course, he has a business interest. Almost everybody who wants this to happen has a major business interest. And actually, I'm challenging, Mike Tyson's been so vocal. I would never challenge him in the boxing ring, but maybe I could take him in a debate. So we are challenging him openly to a debate by the Daily Caller would host. And Mike, if you're listening, go on our Twitter, Washington, D.C. in a week or two. Let's do it. Because he's been the most vocal person on this, you know, urging President Trump. But I hope he doesn't listen to him.
I wish we had some way of testing. We don't. Of who's going to get addicted, who's going to have hyperemesis, who's going to get psychotic. Then it would be a much more sort of manageable substance, right? But no other drug.
Yeah, it's so unpredictable.
It's very unpredictable, and it can really sneak up on people. And herb green, the vomiting is not normal. I assure you, we've seen it. We can talk about Paulina. You mentioned Paulina here, who's recovering from cannabis addiction. She had hyperemesis for a year, vomited all over our house.
She ruined a really nice carpet.
Yeah, and never once associated it with the cannabis, of course, until she got sober, and then was like, oh my God, they treated me for all these different things.
Right, she had a lot of experimentation on why she was throwing up.
And nobody ever said, would you, hey, look at the weed here, why don't we?
Right, I mean, and you're Dr. Drew. You're like the guy that, I mean, so imagine the average American who has not read this thinks it's about Woodstock weed, 3% THC in 1965, 5% in 1980. We sort of gradually became a better agriculturalists with regard, but something happened when we legalized it. You know, and for purported medical, I mean, we also know that most of the medical, let's just be honest, most of the medical is a joke. It's a hangnail or headache. You can get a card if you have a pulse. You say that you slept less than 8 hours, that's insomnia. And all of a sudden you're getting a card. Now, I'm not saying there aren't legitimate uses of the components for medicine. Of course, I know I'm going to get a lot of hate mail about that. There are. And frankly, you could go to town. You have a terminal illness, and this helps you with maybe your nausea for some of the drugs you're taking. I could care less if you're taking meth.
Yeah,
I could care less.
Please take it. Yeah,
please take it if you want. But the reality is, for the vast majority of people, unfortunately, and they have these. You know, it's like 1% of doctors in California are the ones that are recommending, 90% of the recommendations. So this is a money job, and they've gone to Florida. They've gotten into the president's ear on this, and we're really hoping he does the right thing and listens to really everybody else other than the money people who are telling him to do this.
It's what was the actor's name? The actor was I'm breaking on his name right now, but he actually had the most honest appraisal of the medical cannabis that he was getting prescribed. He went in and said, yes, I have a cannabis deficiency. That's my problem. I need more cannabis. That's my medical problem, cannabis deficiency. And
listen,
that's honest. That's
you're right. Well, It reminds me of the kid, when I give some of these lectures, the kid that tells me, Kevin, marijuana addiction is not a real thing. And because they're on Reddit and they read all the propaganda from the legalizers.
Yeah.
And I say, well, how do you know it's not a real thing? And he said, because I know I'm so experienced. I use marijuana every single day. I know that it's not a real thing to be addicted.
Right.
And it's like, okay.
Right. I can stop. I just don't want to stop. But it's I'm a freedom fighter at heart, and
Sure.
I wish we could have more rational conversations about this. I mean, I think everyone understands alcohol is a problem for some people and not for others.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cannabis is a problem for some people and not for others. And the question is, maybe what if we could control the concentration? Kevin, would you be a little more
we're trying
in favor of reclassifying that then?
Well, listen, we're trying to do that in the States. I mean, it's not like we're, ignoring the realities of dozens of states that have gone this way. But, the marijuana industry is so strong. They say we want to be regulated and legal and legitimate. The minute that they are that, they don't want to be regulated. What business wants to be regulated? Nobody wants to be regulated. So when you say that you want, potency restrictions, like, do you really need 70% potent? I mean, there's no need for it. Do you really need kid-friendly packaging? Do you really need to be less than 500 feet from a school? There are reasonable restrictions, but the lobby is so powerful that it's very difficult to do that. And people bring up alcohol a lot, and sort of well, alcohol is legal. Why wouldn't we do this with marijuana? And sort of why wouldn't we be consistent? And alcohol isn't legal because it's good for you. Nobody says, "I wish more people drank." Nobody says, "If only more kids, if my family members, if only more of them drank, we'd be better off." Nobody says that. It's legal because it's been culturally accepted for 5,000 years. We're stuck with it, unfortunately, it's a little bit to our peril. It's like the number one drug for crime, the number one drug for talk about disproportionate incarceration and arrest. It hurts the lower class communities disenfranchised much more than other communities. So it's a very terrible drug in that way. But if your headlights are broken, you don't break your taillights just to be consistent.
No.
And so,
but let's shit. I want to shit on alcohol more. Alcohol. It's the only drug that we take that's carcinogenic. It's carcinogen to almost every tissue in your body. It is the only drug from which the withdrawal can easily be fatal. It is, particularly in young adults and teens, every adverse health every adverse health outcome you can name involves alcohol. And as you said, in terms of the penitentiary system and all, and the people on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum get disproportionately affected by that drug. But Kevin, I got to wrap this up. Thank you for coming in. We'll see what President Trump does, and maybe I'll talk to you again then.
Thanks for having me. Take care.